Here's how we left our design after part 1. We haven't yet saved our design, so let's do that now. Whenever you create or modify a design, whether it's in Generations or any other digitizing program, you should save it. When I say save, I mean save it in the native working format, because this is what's going to preserve all the native characteristics and make it easy for you to modify in the future. When you get ready to sew on your machine, you're going to export, and exporting just creates a stitches only file, and that's not very editable, especially at Generations. So let's go to File, Save As, and we'll just call our design Flower. And now our design is saved. You should come up with some system for naming and storing your files, and that's a subject for another time. In this segment, we'll make our leaves much more interesting. We'll split the leaves in half, change the stitch direction to emulate the leaf structure, and add dimension to the design, and change the stitch attributes. In a future video, we'll add shading to our leaves. So first, let's make our flower larger. It's fairly small. I'm going to shrink the design down, and if I turn on my hoop, you'll see that it's about a quarter the size of a 4x4 hoop. So I'm going to do Control A. I'm going to click on the resize box, and I'm going to type in 95 and generate. So there's our resized design. At this point, all of our areas are fill stitches. And let's do a little bit of modification. If we right click and drag a selection around, you can see that this has a density of 0.4. That's a little tight for my taste, so I'm going to change it to 0.45. Press enter. And with everything still activated, I'm going to press the space bar to access Area Object Stitch Properties. I'm going to change basic step, which is Generations lingo for stitch length, to 4. And on the complex tab, I'm going to change the max step to 5. That's millimeters. I always work in millimeters. And I'm going to change the minimum step, which is the minimum stitch length, to 0.5. We'll leave everything else the same. And click OK. So nothing really appears to have happened. If you were watching, you would have noticed that our stitch count reduced a bit. Now we're going to work on the leaves. So we're going to go into outline mode, and whenever you work on an object, you work on it one at a time. We're going to split these leaves in half, and as we did with Adjust with New Line, we're going to select one leaf, going to right click, bring up the menu, and I'm going to choose Divide with a Curve. You start by clicking outside the object, and then we'll just click through it, right click, left click. So you're going to start outside, end outside, and as you click through it, you're going to place right or left clicks to determine your line. With any drawing tool in Generations, right click makes a curve point, left click makes a corner or a straight point. A good practice is to use as few points as possible. Select the next one, right click, divide with a curve, left click outside, right click, left click, enter, escape, right click again, divide with a curve, left click, right click, left click, enter. Escape, right click, and generate. You want to make sure that nothing is selected when you generate. That way everything that you modified gets regenerated. And there's our design. Nothing really fantastic yet. The next step is to change the stitch angles. So I'm just going to left click on each one, or excuse me, I'm just going to right click on each one and change the little stitch direction handle to make it kind of resemble a leaf. Now nothing has really been updated yet. I need to generate for any change to happen. And can you see now that our stitches are flowing outward more like a leaf, and they look more realistic? So if I could maybe want to adjust that one a little bit more. So we're looking at this in 3D so that we can see our stitch angles a little bit better. This will look more interesting when we sew it. When threads run in different directions, they reflect light differently. And when the light reflects differently, the colors get a little bit different. So it adds a little bit of shading and a little bit of highlight. So this is a great way to add instant texture and dimension to a design without adding another thread color. You don't always need to add more thread colors. Changing stitch direction can make your design a lot more interesting. Now you might be wondering why I made the stitches longer. I set my density a little bit less. If you don't understand what density is, it's the amount of space between rows of stitches, and you can learn more about it in Anatomy of a Design. Also in Anatomy of a Design, you'll find out why longer stitches cover better, and by having a little less density and a little longer stitch, you can have a much better coverage with a lower stitch count. As with all things in digitizing, a little bit goes a long way. The right amount is the right amount. A little bit more or a little bit less may be totally wrong. A lot of it has to do with experimenting, and that's why we run swatch tests, and you can watch the video on swatch tests to determine that.